What's up, everybody, and welcome to an all-new episode of Casters of Horror. I am Chris Mess.
I'm Shane, and this week we're breaking down Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yep, it's a film that hit a lot of top tens this last year, and we're gonna see if it lived up to the hype or not. We're gonna leave it in the dark and see if we can find whatever remnants are left of it after this is over. So Shane and I have been talking for the last hour, and we're both in a fit of rage. It's like our cycles have linked up at this point, and we're both just over everything. So if we seem a little edgy this episode, it's all of your fault. Anyway, it's definitely not ours. But to start things off a little bit lighter, we got a little bit of movie news. So, Shane, you got a little bit, and then I'll follow you up.
Yeah, sure.
After that,
I did want to make a correction. Last week when I was talking about The Last of Us premiere, I said it had premiered to 45 million. That was actually 4.5 million. But I mean, what's a factor of 10 here and there? Whatever.
What's a decimal point?
Yeah. But I mean, it was still their second highest premiere.
Yeah.
Ever.
I'm glad you didn't say something like, speaking of periods, we missed one.
Yeah.
So
missed one. Yeah.
So anyway.
But no, obviously that's still respectable. I don't know where I got 45 million at. But anyway, I think, they ended up settling on 4.7 million. And that's after, I think that's within a 48-hour period. And then it climbed to 10 million. And the only reason I bring this up is because episode 2 just dropped on Sunday. And the viewership it looks like 5.7 million. That is their highest ever increase from a premiere to a second episode for HBO Max.
Yeah, I heard the second one got a lot more views.
Yeah.
At least the first day.
Yeah, that's just first day. So that's not even taken into account what's going to happen now. This has spiked the sales of both games. This is very well deserved. I think the series is amazing so far.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot of Twitch streamers and everything. They're going back to playing the games. They're going to be streaming them again and talking about the episodes while they're streaming, playing them. And I don't know. I know Alana Pierce. You familiar with her?
Oh, yeah, I know her.
Yeah. So anyway, she was talking about how she was going to go through, play the game again. And who's the guy who did Midnight Mass? You and I were just talking about him the other day.
Mike Flanagan?
Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
Anyway, she said, I would love to have people come on there and talk with me about it. And he's like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
He was like, pick me.
Yeah, pick me.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's getting a lot of people talking. I haven't seen this much talk about a show since the beginning of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
So it's been a minute. So
yeah, well deserved. I think they've done a fantastic job with it. I'm really looking forward to the rest of it. But speaking of HBO Max, we do have more news coming out of there, and that is, their show Velma, which is the prequel series to Scooby-Doo.
Yes,
so to speak. It's an interpretation of a prequel to Scooby-Doo.
Yes. Without Scooby,
yes,
and or the Doo.
Yeah, there are no Scoobies or Doos
or the Shags.
Yeah, well, Norval is in it. Just he's not called Shaggy yet.
Okay.
So yeah, that is Norval is Shaggy. That's his name. So
okay.
But anyway, regardless, I'm only bringing this up. Velma is, of course, it's Scooby-Doo is a tangentially horror property. Tell you what, the ratings are pretty horrifying too, because it is now officially the worst rated television or animated show on IMDb right now. It is the third worst rated television show ever. Yeah. It is, I think Warner Brothers Animation, it is their worst ever rated. Literally everybody hates this thing. Except for the people who have to get on and claim, oh, it was review bombed. But
yeah. Now
No.
this was created, written by, voiced by Mindy Keeling, right? Or
So partially,
yeah,
she actually didn't write the first episode. This was I can't remember the guy's name now. I've seen him do other things, but it has been kind of like her passion project. I mean, Velma is very clearly a self-insert character for her.
yeah.
Um, wow, people are not liking it.
I've never been a fan of hers anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved The Office, but she was just annoying to me.
Yeah,
I never got into her other show that she did after The Office.
yeah, I never
so
watched it. I don't know
I
anything
just
about it. So.
she's one of those people that some people find hilarious, and I am not one of them.
Nope, me neither. But whatever.
Man, this is gonna be a brutal episode.
It sure is fun watching this train wreck, though. Yeah. So,
Yeah, we're just loving watching the world burn today.
yeah.
But speaking of more things that we've talked about in past episodes that are coming up now again. If you guys watched last week's episode where we talked with Steve Barton, aka Uncle Creepy, we talked about icons and horror icons as such.
Oh yeah.
And how maybe some studios are, kind of beating them to death, beating a dead horse, if you will. Don't come after us, PETA.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was uncovered this last week that Sean S. Cunningham, the creator of Friday the 13th, he also did the 80s film House. He is now working on his own reboot of Friday the 13th. they are going to be bringing it back. I didn't know it ever went away, but I guess they're doing a complete reboot of it now.
We talked about this a while back, how a lot of this has been tied up in rights issues as far as ownership and all that.
True.
That's why the series announcement for Peacock was such a big deal. But
yeah, well, he is the one who's he's going to be bringing it back himself. So he's also going to be developing a reboot of his horror movie, like I said, of House, 1985, not the Hugh Laurie,
yeah, which is the first thing I thought when I heard it.
Yeah, me too. It was like, he's going to be rebooting House, and I'm like, why? I mean, that show just went off the air. He's also going to be working on an original film. He's producing it called The Night Driver, alongside writers Jeff Locker and Jeremy Weiss.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, again, do we need these characters again and again and again? But some people are like,
but if it's the original creator, I can get behind the concept of the original creator taking his creation.
But rebooting it?
I mean, at this point, what else can you do, man? The lore is so messed up, and
yeah, but man, move on, man.
Let
those things be. Let them be. They still, the original ones still hold up. It's not like,
I would say they hold up as well as they did, and you can take that for however you want to take it.
But, I'm just saying. I mean,
look, to a degree, like, I do agree. But then, what was our very first episode of this podcast? It was Hellraiser, the reboot.
This is true. This is true.
So,
and that was really good.
Yeah, we really liked it. I know, but
don't make me eat my own words.
But you know why this is an issue is because we talked to Steve Barton last week, and we talked about how Art the Clown just seemed to offer us something different, or at least something that we felt we hadn't had for a very long time. And so I think it is going to be hard to go back to some of these icons.
And granted, I loved the first two Halloween whatevers, the new versions of them. So Yeah,
But you know
I
what
don't
gets me
know.
too is like you and I are actually kind of in the minority on Halloween Kills, where that we both liked it. I didn't think it was as good as the 2018,
Yeah.
but a lot of people like really hate that movie and think that Ends was better. So
Oh man, I see. And Halloween Kills to me was just it just upped the kills. I mean, that's
yeah,
the only reason why I liked it more.
yeah,
Honestly, they could have ended it with the 2018 one, and I would have
oh
been
yeah,
perfectly fine.
totally fine. Yeah, but
Um,
I don't
I
know.
don't. I didn't care for the ending of Halloween Kills too much.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know. I mean, I had issues with it, but it was still a fun one to me.
yeah,
Ends was just a whole. It was like I'm still waiting for the third Halloween movie.
I know, right? Yeah,
Are we really going to sit here and talk about
I
Halloween
know.
Ends
Why,
though again
man?
for? I mean, I even brought it up last week. Jeez,
We are super
this
excited to get into this week's movie, aren't we?
this. Oh man, we're already 11 minutes into this podcast, and we're just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're the embodiment of that meme, you know, where it's like listening to a podcast. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in. 10, 20 minutes later.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just jump on in.
All right.
So I guess we might as well just jump on in.
Guess we might as well.
while we're at it, this week we are talking about the film. Should we put like dubstep in here or like some hip hop, some TikTok music or something? We're like bodies, bodies, bodies. To make it for oh my word. I'm talking right now and I'm just thinking about how old I sound. Yeah.
So,
Anyway,
Chris,
yeah.
is this an actual game? Because we'll get into it, but before we like,
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know either. I'd never heard of it, but it was
I had
presented.
never played it.
Yeah,
I had never played it.
okay.
You know, I'm gonna look it up. Because if you can explain the game to people who may not have seen
Sure. So,
or do you understand the game?
oh yeah, it's like it's a murder mystery thing. The whole thing. And this movie is like a whodunit, right? But I guess
Yeah.
it's a game. Apparently, I don't know if it actually exists, but um, you know, everybody that's participating is handed these cards. On one of the cards is an X or whatever, some sort of mark that identifies you as the killer, and then all the lights go out, and you have to go around and like tap someone on the back or something. And if you get tapped, you're dead. You go down to the ground, and as you're moving around, if you come across a dead body, so to speak, then you shout out bodies, 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 and then everybody turns the lights on, and you try to figure out who the killer is. So it sounds like a game that actually does exist.
See, and I've played a game like this called Mafia.
Okay.
It's a parlor type game. It's a party game. It's a parlor game.
Yeah.
But there was a game called Mafia that I had played. But this is like Mafia meets the game Among Us.
Yeah.
You know, people
Well, I mean, you know, like I don't know what Mafia is, but like Werewolf, where you're all sitting in the circle, and then everybody closes
and see,
their eyes.
even Greg, who we find out later, you know, is in the film. He even says at one point, he says, "Are you guys still playing Werewolf?"
Oh, does he? I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, he does mention that, but he is in the much older demographic as you and I are. So, anyway, so it's named after a game that maybe or maybe not existed prior to this. Whether or not it does, if you were able to crawl around on the floor or still have parties, then it's a fun game. It appears to be. I cannot crawl on the floor, so yeah, I've got a bad back. Anyway,
that's all I can do is crawl.
Yeah, some mornings that's all. It's just like, can we play bodies, bodies, bodies in the bed? Like, I'll just lay there. Anyway, so this film, man, I really should have I thought I had done my homework completely on this thing, but I guess I hadn't. This film was directed by Helena Regine, or Rain. Could be just Rain. It's Reijn.
I don't know.
I believe she's a Dutch filmmaker. She did the film. She wrote Instinct. She was in the film Valkyrie, the one with Tom Cruise about killing Adolf Hitler. She was in Black Book and other films, but she directed this one and wrote it. The writers were also Sarah De Lapp screenplay, and it was based on a story by Kristen Rupinian. Really? Yeah, it's just there's no normal names in this film.
Right.
Anyway, you just wait. There's no normal names in this film. I'm gonna have a hard time saying some of these names. Anyway, yeah. So, bodies. Let's start off. Scene 1 starts out immediately. We see two girls making out, and already.
To be clear, first we hear it.
Then we see two fairly good-looking hot girls making out. And I said at this point, best movie of the year so far. Because, it went on for a while.
Yeah, to be clear, we hear every detail of this makeout session for like a full minute, if not longer.
Yeah. Tongues, everything.
Lips smacking. The sounds.
I was already into this film. So deep into this film. The two girls we find out later are named Sophie and B, which I guess it's like a bee that goes bzzz.
Yeah.
To which all my notes I have written V.
So do I.
As in for Vendetta.
Yeah, I have VI, but
and I was like, well, that's Vi or V. And so I just had the letter V.
Oh, okay.
And so if I refer to her as V at any point in time, that's why.
Yeah. Because, to be clear, it's not until like very near the end of the film that someone actually enunciates the B. You actually
I found it out by IMDb.
Oh, did you? I actually heard it at near the very end of the film. You can actually hear someone enunciate that letter, B. And I'm like, is it B? And then so I went and looked it up later. It is. Yeah. It's B.
This is another one of those films where names are hard to catch.
Yeah.
Throughout it because they're just kind of thrown at points flippantly.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell who sometimes people are talking to.
Yeah. It doesn't help that some of the characters look the same.
Yeah. It's just because we're old.
Yeah, sure.
Sophie is played by Amandla Stenberg. Not Amanda. Amandla Stenberg. She was in the film The Hate You Give, also The Darkest Minds. She was also Rue from The Hunger Games. I was like, oh, okay.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
So however.
Wow.
Yeah. She was Rue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So B is played by Maria Bakalova. She was in the film The Bubble. She was also in Borat, the subsequent movie film, which was Borat 2. She plays not Borat. She plays the girl, also from, I believe, the same place. I can't remember where he's from.
Yeah.
Anyway, and she will be in the upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy 3. She's the voice of Cosmo, the space dog. Sure, whatever. Yeah. Cosmo the Space Dog is actually going to be one of the new Guardians. So, Anyway, B says "I love you" to Sophie after the makeout session. Sophie does not say it back. She's very.
I thought this was reversed, but
was it?
Yeah, I think it was.
I thought B said it. B said it, and Sophie just laid there and looked at her.
Yeah, I think you've got it backward, but it doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, I changed it this morning because I thought it was a B, and then all I had was one of them says I love you, the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
And then I forgot who it was. So this is how close of attention
Yeah.
we gave this film after the fact, even.
Yeah. Well, I think because it actually does come up later near the end of the film.
It does, but that's why I was like,
okay.
That's why I thought when she says it later and the other one doesn't say it, it's because it's like it made more. And then I was like, oh, she didn't say. But anyway, we'll get to that.
Whatever.
But we'll have this argument again later.
Yeah.
They're both riding in a car now. They're talking about going to meet Sophie's old friends. They are going to be spending a weekend together, just partying and whatnot with Sophie's old friends. So we can tell that B did not grow up amongst the same people.
Yeah.
They've met later in life and whatnot. We pull up to the gates of a mansion. Sophie can't get her window down of her vehicle to hit the button, so she has to get out, hit the button, blah, blah. Gates open. They go and they park. It's a huge mansion.
Yeah.
Huge.
And it looks like it has like multiple buildings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
B says she forgot something in the car. She like rummages around, blah, blah, blah. She goes, I think she's like putting makeup on or like checking herself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And she leaves the mirror down with the little flappy do thingy open.
Yeah.
And the light stays on, like the little vanity light stays on.
Yeah.
She closes the door, goes into the house. Next, we see Pete Davidson in a pool. I'm just going to refer him as Pete throughout the whole thing, so everybody. We find out way later that his name's David, but
Yeah.
I'll just refer to him as Pete. He's in a pool. Everybody's underwater for some reason, like everybody. And then they pop up. They see like somebody walking up to the pool. They pop up, and they see that it's Sophie. You know, some of them are not happy that she's there.
Yeah.
One in particular being Jordan. Jordan is played by Mahala Harold. She was in the TV show Industry. She was also on the film Premature and Plan B. There's another young girl named Alice in the pool as well. She was played by Rachel Sennott. She was in the films Shiva Baby, Call Your Mother, and she did some TV stuff. And we also meet Emma, who is Pete's girlfriend in this. Chase Sui Wonders. She was in the film Out of the Blue, On the Rocks, and from the TV show Generation. Emma is an actress. Alice is a podcaster. And Jordan is a bitch.
Pretty much.
Yeah. We have no idea what Jordan does. So,
No.
but we've figured out the other ones. So, then all of a sudden some old dude pops out of the water. I say old dude, he's our age.
Yeah, he's our age.
He pops out of the water. He's more like one of those, hey man, what's up type guys.
Yeah.
He's like, I told you guys I have really big lungs, because he was like the last one to come up. So,
Yeah.
Greg, we find out his name is played by Lee Pace, which when I first heard him being in this film, I'm like, wait, what? He's in this thing? He was from Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one. He played Ronan. He was also from all of the Hobbit films. He was one of the elves. I forgot what his name was in that. He was also in Captain Marvel, Lincoln, Possession, Driven, the anime Weathering with You. And he was the lead character of one of my wife's all-time favorite TV shows, Pushing Daisies. Let's see. Did you ever see that show?
I've never seen it. I'm aware of it.
Oh,
I've heard it was really
great
good.
show.
Yeah.
Great show. Anyway, B is now inside the house. She's kind of snooping around. Huge place. Looking at stuff. She eventually comes out to the pool side. She gets introduced, and Jordan's mad.
Yeah.
Jordan's mad that Sophie's didn't respond to their chat or whatever, that they didn't even know that she was coming.
Yeah.
She showed up late. They didn't know why she was showing up late. She's like a day late from everybody else. And she brought somebody. Like, they didn't know that she was going to bring somebody.
Yeah. The group I have here that I don't really understand the group dynamic yet, because some of them seem excited to see her.
Yeah, I was like, do we ever understand?
I know, right? Some of them seem excited to see her. Some of them seem pissed that she's there. Others just don't understand why she showed up at all. So it's it's weird.
And see, that kind of plays along too with a lot of this stuff. Like the one girl who was excited to see him there, she's the podcaster one.
Oh yeah, okay.
And she just thinks that everything's okie dokie with everybody.
Yeah.
Jordan's mad because she obviously puts her priorities before everybody else's.
Yeah.
And Emma is just like, whatever, because she just doesn't care about anything else.
Yeah.
She's in her own world. So, and then, then there's Pete. Where was I at? We find out that it is Pete Davidson's dad's house. Not in real life. It's David's.
Yeah. It's David's house. Yeah.
David's dad's house. It's very explicit. Like, this is my dad's, this is his stuff, blah, blah. Greg pulls out a bottle. He's like, look what I found. It's time to celebrate. It's a bottle of champagne. Greg finds some old, like, military sword that was hanging on the wall, and he does that, popping bottles trick where he, like, hits the top of it off, and everybody's like, woo, that was so awesome, you're so great, and Pete Davidson is like, man, he's not so cool,
It's because they open the champagne at all, because it's expensive stuff, and then, it's a sword, I found it hanging on the wall, and David's like, don't touch stuff that's hanging on the wall.
So, there's people that obviously don't understand boundaries or parameters. And we find that out, that this whole generation doesn't understand just anything else. So they're like, do you want some? And Sophie's like, no, I'm sober.
Yeah.
We find out that she doesn't drink. She doesn't do drugs or anything. She's been sober. And they're like, well, good for you. That's fine. Then she asks Alice, so where's Max? She's like, oh, we're taking a break.
Yeah.
And then we find out that there's a hurricane rolling in.
Yeah.
And they're going to be...
That's what they're all doing here. They're here to, like, celebrate the hurricane. I mean,
yeah, I couldn't quite figure that out. It's like, did they all come from different areas to, like, because this is a safe place?
Yeah.
And they're all, or maybe they're just like, if we're going out together. So I don't know. They're all there. Yeah. That's all we know. And Pete Davidson's like, bring it on. And he's standing out there in his robe. He's like, is that all you got? And, next thing, immediately we see that B, I almost said V.
Yeah.
B and Sophie are making out in their bedroom now. Again, picking right up where they left off. I mean, it's up close and personal. Pete comes in, he just interrupts. And he's like, hey, Sophie, we need to talk in private. So they go off to talk. Jordan finds B looking around the house. We find out that Sophie also came from money, and that her parents' house is even bigger than Pete's place. And Jordan starts moving in to B like she's about ready to kiss her.
Yeah, very, very close up.
Yeah, and she's just like, be careful with Sophie.
Yeah.
And then she's like, it looks like she's going to try to move her way in on Sophie and B. And so you're just like, oh, is she into girls too? I don't know. So, and at this day and age, everybody's into everybody. So whatever. Yeah. So Pete's wondering why Sophie brought B without telling anybody. So they're off in like the dad's office or something, or somewhere.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, like, what's going on.
And this is another really weird thing that I don't know if it ever really comes up, but like why does it matter? Like they seem to be like really upset. One, that she showed up at all, and two, that she brought someone.
Yeah, and it's like, why did you bring someone from outside the circle? But and it seemed like they didn't have much of an issue with Greg being there, which we find out Greg isn't part of their original crew.
Yeah,
he came with Alice, and so it's like he's already upset that Greg's there for one, but now he's got this other person, so it's like, I don't know. So we kind of find out Pete or David and Sophie have been friends since childhood. She talks about rehab, and he's like, yeah, so rehab and no drugs for Sophie, blah, blah. And then she's like, well, who's Greg? And then that kind of becomes a thing. And then she's like, well, what happened to your face? Because, like, Pete Davidson has a black eye.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, Max did this.
Yeah. We don't really get a lot about Max. He's mentioned a few more times, but it's basically like he's obviously part of this friend group, but he's not there. No, he was there and he left. Yeah. And then we get Pete Davidson riffing about his face. Yeah.
And looking funny for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Obviously ad-libbed. He's just going on and on and on. So anyway, and she's like, well, have you talked to my parents and stuff like that? And you can tell she has not talked to her parents in a while.
Yeah.
So there was some sort of fallout.
Yeah, he kind of just ignores that, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's just like, he doesn't, it's basically like, look, it's not my problem to talk to your family type thing. B goes downstairs. We see Greg meditating on a couch. The rest of the girls are in the kitchen. B says that she wants to know if she can access the Wi-Fi. She's not getting any good signal or anything. And Jordan's like, well, what's your email? I'll send it to you. And you're like, oh, she's gonna do something.
Yeah.
And that never comes to anything.
No.
Anyway, B calls home. She's like, sorry, I didn't have any signal, but I'm on Wi-Fi, so I can call you now. Next thing we get is the girls they're filming a TikTok video. And Greg's just in the background.
Yeah.
Dancing around. They give B a drink. She's drinking. She's like, woo! She's getting in. She's now getting a little bit more comfortable partying.
Yeah.
We then see them all sitting at a table, and B is eating a whole chocolate cake by herself.
She's just like digging right into this. Yeah, it's so weird. She has the whole cake in front of her.
Yeah, and she's just like, and then we find out she's only been with Sophie for 6 weeks, and they're like, oh wow, that's a long time for Sophie.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, okay, what's going on with that? And then Jordan's like, oh yeah, by the way, that cake has weed in it.
Yeah.
And so now B is high as a kite. They're dancing, making out, partying.
Yeah.
Everybody's partying, dancing, and all this sort of stuff. And then for some reason,
like screaming like friends to the end stuff,
Yeah. Like, we all love each other, blah, blah, blah. And then Pete is like biting his girlfriend while kissing her. And she's like, you need to stop. You need to stop.
Yeah.
And then Sophie's like, Pete, David, you need to chill out, man. And then he's like, well, you need to watch your girl with Jordan. Yeah. And we see that Jordan and B are dancing together. And you're like, oh, more drama.
Yeah.
This is so far just a high school TV show at this point. And then Sophie's like, well, I'll put an end to this type thing. She grabs like the karaoke mic or something. She's like, silence! Who wants to play Bodies, Bodies, Bodies? And you're like, oh, we get the title of the film.
Yeah.
And then one of the girls is like, every time we play that, people start fighting. And then Pete's like, that's what makes it fun. And Jordan is giving Sophie the stink eye. Then at this point, she's like, meh, And then one of the, I think it's, is it, yeah, okay. So Pete's sitting on the couch. We've got Emma sitting on his lap. And she's like, I don't understand why Max isn't responding to my texts. And he just pushes her off his lap.
Yeah.
And he walks across the room and sits on another couch.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa,
Wow.
that's kind of weird. Okay. Then they explain the rules of the game. Party, parlor, murders, lights out game.
Yeah.
And then Pete's like, hey, Alice, come here. And then they go to the kitchen. They decide to snort some lines of some droogies, some white droogies on the counter. And then I don't know why, but they're all sitting around in a circle, and then they slap the person next to them and then drink a shot.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to be clear, to set this up, they're in like this living room type area. Who wants to play bodies? They explain the rules to, I think, Greg, what's this,
Mm-hmm.
And then they immediately don't do that.
Yeah, they start smacking each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And then Jordan just decks B. Just hits her.
Yeah.
Like hard. Like slaps her really hard. And then B's like, oh, okay. And so B just kind of taps Pete on the cheek.
Yeah.
They're like, no, you got to go for it. And so she does a little harder. And he's like, come on, you really got to do it. So she hits him a little harder. And then Pete's like, no, you got to do it like this. And he turns to Greg and just decks him.
He does.
Like knocks him out.
Full fist, just bam.
And they're like, oh, David, you're such an a-hole. And they're like, okay, lights out. Yeah. So they turn all the lights out. Jordan gives B like, I'm watching you type thing very seductively, but it's like, okay. And then B watches her walk away, and she's kind of like giddy and giggling, and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Nobody has any morals. It's game on at this point. They're crawling around with just a flashlight looking for the bodies.
Yeah.
And then someone just yells, bodies. You see them all run around the house. It's not quick.
No. This is a sequence. You actually get to see the game played, but it's,
Yeah. But I'm not going to explain every little bit of that.
No.
So someone eventually yells out, bodies. We see that Greg is out. He's laying on the floor, face down.
Yep.
They're like, all right, who's the killer? And Greg's acting really, really well, it seems. He's just not moving whatsoever. They keep trying to shake him, to check him. And they're like, okay, you can stop. You can stop now. And you're like, oh, he's dead. And then Pete's like, oh, here's the way you can get him. And then like hits him on the balls with like a beer bottle.
Yeah.
And Greg like pops up and he's like, oh. So now they're trying to guess who the killer is. Eventually, Greg says, well, I think it's, it could be, maybe it's David. They're all saying about maybe it's David.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, that's what they would say. Maybe the best defense is a good offense. And Pete's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What's that supposed to mean? And he's like, what does it mean to you type thing? And he's like, there's this big conversation about that. Pete's getting mad. And then he's like, I'm just messing with you, Greg. I'm just messing with you. And then Greg gets up in Pete's face. They're like, I'm just having fun. And Greg's like, well, basically, like, I guess he's almost like, I guess it's time for this old man then to get to bed type thing. Because Pete's kind of like, why are you here type thing? You're old and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's basically like, I'm dead anyway.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not wanted here, so he just leaves.
So he goes off to go to bed. And then someone's like, I think it's Emma. And then they're like, why do you think it's me? And she's like, oh, you're bad at acting, blah, blah. And she's like, I am an actress and blah, 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 and all this. And you always do this look, you always do this thing whenever you get nervous or blah, blah, blah. And then Alice is like, is that why you guys never have sex?
Yeah.
And then Pete's like, what? And then she's like, no, I never said. And he's like, are you talking behind my back? And then he gets mad at her, smashes a bottle. He's like, F this game. And he just leaves.
Yeah.
So now he's gone.
Yeah. Well, before he does this, before he's gone, she says something, yada, you're always gaslighting me.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes off on this term. And like it has no meaning anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody uses it. You know, you don't. What does that even mean? You know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Which I agree with, by the way. But
yeah, just there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's lost a lot of its meaning.
Yeah,
I get that. Yeah, because it's even like at the beginning of this when the girl's like, "I love you."
Yeah.
I mean, some of that's even lost meaning. It's just because some things are just overused to the point where, they don't mean what they mean.
I realize that seems like a very odd thing to bring up, but there's a reason I did, and we will definitely get into it. So,
all right. So, it's now just the girls. Obviously, that round's over, I guess, because they're back to slapping and doing shots again.
Yeah.
Hard. And then the power goes out.
Yeah.
And then one of the girls is like, it's probably just David messing with us. And she's like, David! She's screaming for him and all this sort of stuff. And the one girl's like, I'm going to go check the generator or, check to see if there's a generator type thing or the breakers or whatever. I don't know what else. She's looking for something.
Know.
Turn the power back on. The one girl's like, I gotta pee, and the other girl's like, oh, I gotta go. I'm gonna go check on this, and then the other one, then B's like, well, I need to use the bathroom too. So she goes off, and so it's just Sophie sitting there. So all the girls have now split up.
Yeah.
Again, the flashlight is now the only light, so it's like the game.
Yeah.
Again, and all of a sudden we hear this loud bang on the window behind Sophie. It's David. He's got his throat slit.
Yeah.
And he's dying outside. And it's downpouring at this point. The hurricane is now...
Hurricane's here. It is a downpour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
got this huge gash across his neck.
Yeah. And girls are all screaming. They run outside to try to help him. There's no phone service and all this. So the David's dying or dead pretty much at this point. Jordan grabs Sophie's car keys. She wants to get them so she can drive and get help. All the girls run to the car and they all pile in. And of course, since the vanity light was left on, the battery's dead.
Yep.
We find out it was the only car because Max had driven them all there. And it was the only car and he was gone.
Yeah.
And he had dropped them off. So, next we see the girls are back inside the house. They're drying off in one of the bedrooms with a door locked. And they go, where's Jordan? She's like, well, she's trying to turn the power on. Like, how would she know where the power's at?
Yeah.
Anyway, we hear this loud bang at the door. And the door, we hear it's Jordan. They open the door to let her in. And Jordan's there soaking wet. And she's holding that old sword that was used to open the champagne bottle earlier. And it's covered in blood. She's like, I found this outside. And you're like, well, that's not a little odd.
Yeah.
They're like, well, what do we do? What do we do? We're in danger. And they're like, the house has a code to get in. And they're like, well, Max has the code. So now they're thinking maybe it's Max coming to kill everybody.
Yeah. Because it's not, at this point, it's not really clear what exactly happened. Why he's pissed at everyone.
Right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because Sophie says, what the hell happened last night?
Yeah.
We found out that they had done mushrooms. They had all went space traveling together.
Yeah.
And he had told Emma that he was in love with her. Again, Pete Davidson's girlfriend, Emma,
Yeah.
was told Max was in love with her. Of course, David was, he was like, oh, that's cool, whatever, man. You know, because they're tripping balls. So, but, you know, maybe things had changed now, you know, and he wasn't cool with it. Maybe they had some vendetta against each other, and that's why Max was gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were like, Alice, where's Greg? She's like, he's asleep. Well, I think.
Yeah.
She goes, and they're like, well, how long have you known him? And she's like, well, you know, yeah, I know a lot about him and all this.
Yeah.
And so it goes into this long thing. She hasn't known him for very long. It's only been like a couple weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't know like his middle name. She doesn't know. She only thing
No.
she really knows about him is that he's a Libra.
Yeah.
Oh,
And he's
and it comes
he's
up.
a vet.
Yeah, he's a vet. That's what I was going to say too. He's
Yeah.
a vet.
Yeah, he's a vet. So she starts screaming for Greg, and they're all trying to get her quiet because they don't want him to know where she's at if he's the one killing people. And they're like, well, where's Emma? And I'm like, why is it nobody can keep track of anybody in this movie already?
So she's shouting for Greg, right? And they're all shushing her, and she goes, "You're silencing me."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have that. Yeah.
And again, there's a reason I bring that up.
Terms, man. Terms.
Yes. You're going to hear a lot of buzzwords in this movie, so be prepared.
So, where's Emma? They're like, well, we should go look for her. So they go up to Alice's room. And they peek in the door and all that. Greg isn't... Well, first off, Alice does not want to open the door herself.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, you know... And they're like, you said he was safe, that he wasn't going to hurt anybody. She goes, open the door. And finally, Jordan's just like, screw it. And she just opens the door. Greg is not there. Not in his bed. However, they do find Greg's bag. There's a knife in there. Some, like, survival type stuff. You're like, oh, the dude's a vet. Got it. And, you know, they find this map with the house circled on it and all that sort of... They're like, oh, he's been scoping the place out. You know, why would he have all... He's just intending to kill us all.
Yeah.
They're like, well, let's check Jordan's room.
Yeah, basically, the idea is that he basically inserted himself into this group for a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they go to Jordan's room. We see lines of Diet Coke on the dresser. I don't want to get demonetized.
Yeah.
Or even if we could get monetized.
Yeah.
Sophie notices the druggies on the this is very prevalent later. She notices them. B picks up Jordan's bra for some reason, starts looking at it like very curiously, and Jordan's like, that's mine.
I don't think he's hiding in there.
Yeah, I don't think he's hiding in my bra. And we see that Emma is hiding in Jordan's bed. But it's like she seems like she's been asleep. But she's obviously like drugged out for some sort of reason. And then Alice is like, you want some of these pills? And she's taking like Xanax. And she's like, yeah, I want some. So anyway, there's no Greg. Okay. No Greg in that room.
Now, okay, before they find Emma, they're still talking. So at this point, because they're pretty sure that Greg is doing this, right?
Yeah.
They need a way to defend themselves, okay? Someone, and I don't remember who it is, asks Sophie if there are any guns in the house.
Yes, that's right.
So, that's right, because Sophie and David were like best friends or something, right?
Yeah.
So they asked Sophie, are there any guns in the house? And Sophie's...
I know where you're going with this.
Sophie's answer is, no way. David's a dick, but his politics check out.
Yeah.
And this is almost where I checked out.
Yeah.
This is strike 3 for me, and at this point I'm rooting for the killer. All right?
Yeah.
So
because now we're stating that everybody, no matter if you are of a certain political leaning or whatever, that you have to be check every box.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you are that, you check every box.
Yeah.
Period. Or else canceled. Okay. So if it were old. Anyway, they the future of this world is gone. This is why the Japanese stopped having kids. They continue to go downstairs. They see Greg lying in the middle of a basketball court.
Yeah.
So this house is big enough to have a basketball court.
Yeah,
Okay?
and I'm not sure if this is actually in the house or if this is the other, because there was another building. I'm guessing they're still inside the house, right?
Yeah, because I mean, they were in a covered whatever to get to whatever this is. So it's at least connected to it.
Yeah,
Whether or not
somehow,
it's a different building, it's still connected.
Yeah, he's in the middle of a basketball court. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also like a gym, they've got workout equipment in there too, but it's a basketball court as well. He's got this lighted mask on.
Yeah.
And Alice is like, oh yeah, he wears that for basically like it's anxiety.
Yeah. It's light therapy.
Yeah, light therapy for his anxiety. So you're going, oh, that checks out PTSD. He's a vet.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So then they finally like get him and awaken him, but they're like armed. They're ready to kill him.
Because we didn't really mention it, but throughout this whole time, they've each been arming themselves with something. One of them grabbed like a meat cleaver, so they all have something.
Yeah. Now. And he starts jumping up, and this is where he says, "Oh, you guys are still playing the werewolf game, huh?"
I do have it written down.
And then he's like, "Ah!" And he starts coming after him, like he's like, "Oh yeah, maybe I am the killer." Ah, and he's obviously clueless, or else just acting really well.
Yeah,
he seems to be clueless to what is actually happening, so he's just trying to scare him and all that sort of stuff. And they're screaming. And they're like, David's dead. And he's like, yeah, I know it was part of the game and blah, blah. No, he's actually dead. And he's like, you're effing with me and all that sort of stuff. And they're like, no, you killed him. And he's like, what? No, I didn't kill. And they're coming closer to him with like these knives and all this sort of stuff. And he ends up like disarming them. You're like, dude's got some moves. He like hits it out of the one girl's hand. He grabs the cleaver and all this. And he's like fending, he's defending himself at this point.
Yeah.
And he's like, Alice, what is going on? And she's like, I don't know why I just tried to blah, blah. And Jordan and Emma both attack him. And he like throws them and all this. And they go up against a wall, all this. So it's like he's being attacked, but he's fending himself off. So you're like, maybe he did. And he's standing there and all of a sudden, boom. And blood starts coming down his head. And he starts to drop, and you see B standing behind him with a kettlebell.
Yeah.
Like one of those workout kettlebells.
Yep.
And he's like, what? And he starts to turn, and she nails him with it again.
Yep.
Just takes him out.
Down he goes.
He's dead.
Yeah.
I mean, crushed skull, dead.
Yeah.
And then Alice is like, he didn't do it. I know he couldn't have done it. He didn't do it. And they're like, he's the most likely to have done it.
Yeah.
He's a vet. He had the training type thing. And she's like, yeah, a veterinarian.
Yeah. Yeah.
B killed him. And then B's like, oh my God. And she throws up like all over herself.
Now, this was almost strike 4 for me. because when they said, they're like, on paper, logically, he's the most likely to commit an act of violence, right?
Yeah.
I thought for sure the next line was going to be, he's a white male. I kid you not. I thought that's where this was going. But no,
I told you people, this...
They misunderstood. I promise this is all going to wrap up nicely at the end. It sounds like
Yeah.
I'm complaining right now. There's a reason I'm pointing all this out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I told everybody we this is an angry episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, B vomits on herself. Sophie's like, go change your shirt. We then see everybody's trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Sophie is by herself and she snorts those lines of the drugs off of the coke off of the dresser. And she starts getting angry.
Yeah.
And she's like, my best friend is dead. And they're like, you're so toxic, Sophie, and blah, blah. You're so mean. When you do that. And they all start.
I can't believe you're making this about you. You're so toxic.
Yeah. And so then they all just start breaking down.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no, because now it's like who really did it type thing and all that.
Yeah.
And then Sophie finally turns to Emma and she's like, I wish, you've been a horrible girlfriend, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff to Pete and all that. And she's like, I wish that they had chopped your head off instead.
Yeah.
And Emma just leaves crying. And they're like, where's B? Because like at this point, everybody's like, where's she?
Yeah.
So B is looking through clothes in the closet. I'm like, whose clothes are these?
I don't know.
Looking through some girl's clothes. She's washing the blood off. We see Emma coming around the corner as B's going back, and B hides. She just kind of hides from her. So you're like, what is happening? And Sophie's looking through, she's now tearing through board games, different trinkets and all that sort of stuff, because she's looking for more drugs.
Yeah.
Okay, she's obviously off the wagon now.
Yeah.
And so she comes back up to Emma and she's like, Emma, I'm so sorry. And then Emma kisses Sophie.
Yeah.
And at this point, and you're like, wait, what?
What?
And Sophie's like, no, that's not why why I'm doing that. She's like, isn't this what you wanted? And she's like, do you want some drugs? and Emma's like, yes. And then just walks off.
Yeah.
Okay. So Emma looks for B at this point. And this is where we see B hiding, not at the other part.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Emma. Yeah. Okay. Because Emma was hiding earlier, not B. So now B's hiding from Emma when she sees her. Alice is looking around also for Emma and B at this point, and she hears these noises and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And we see, because it's still dark, Alice trips
over a horror movie.
That's immediately what came to my head. I was like, she tripped over a horror movie. However, in this tripping over,
she actually just tripped over a body.
Yeah. Emma's body.
Yeah.
She then screams. Jordan comes in from nowhere.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, like in an area where she shouldn't have been. I'm like, how did she get down there already?
Yeah.
She's like, I heard something. Maybe she fell. And Alice is like, no, she was pushed. And there was blood like coming down the stairwell and all over the stairs and the walls and all that. And then somebody yells out, it's the game. The killer in the game must be the killer right now.
Yeah.
And they're like, who are you, B? Because they found B at this point.
Yeah, and they're like, well, they mentioned, like, because they're all at each other's throats, and they're all yelling and accusing.
Yeah.
And someone mentions that, like, they're all coked out right now.
Yeah.
And B's like,
yeah.
B's like, not me.
Yeah.
So
and they're all back in that parlor area.
Yeah. And then that's
like,
when they all like turn on her. they like had Googled her, and
Yeah, and there was like, I Googled you. There was no one at your college with your name, and
Yeah.
that could be why. That could be why too. She wanted the email
Oh yeah,
to
yeah,
look for the email address associated with Ohio State or whatever it was.
yeah,
Anyway, there's no one at your college with the name. Blah 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 blah. So then she has to explain like, like what was going on, and she had basically had been lying to Sophie about what
yeah,
had really been going on, how she had to leave school because of her mom, but she couldn't get a job. She got fired from her job, and
yeah,
Sophie's just been dropping her off at the mall, but she had no job. She's just been hanging out in the food court and blah blah blah.
yeah,
And then finally they're just like, "Get out, B," and they all force her outside, and they lock all the doors and the windows. She's
yeah.
trying to find a way in. They're just locking on everything. So she goes back to the car. She breaks into the car, gets a dry hoodie, eats a whole bag of Cheetos.
And honestly,
And then-
at this point, I'm like, okay, I can relate to this lady.
Yeah.
The Cheetos would be the first thing I'd go for too. So
Yeah. Well, then she finds a pair of panties and sniffs them. And then I'm like, now I can relate to this lady. No, not really. But she does. She finds
yeah,
someone's, who I assume is Sophie's, panties, and you're like, this movie's getting so weird.
yeah, yeah,
Like, what is going on? And you're like, maybe she is a psychopath and she is killing them all.
yeah.
Maybe she's the one doing it. So now we're back inside. Jordan's telling the girls to all stay there. She's going to try to find power again. I don't know.
I don't know.
And for some reason, B, instead of staying inside the dry vehicle or leaving her wet clothes on, goes back out into the rain, and she's trying to break into the house again. She comes up to a window by the garage area, and she sees a girl, we're not for sure who.
I think it's pretty obvious it was Jordan.
Okay,
well,
well,
I could see it.
I thought it was obvious.
Okay.
I thought it was obvious, but I wasn't quite for sure if they were trying to make it obvious. But we see a girl.
I think you pretty clearly see her. Yeah.
Okay, so we see a girl pulling out a gun.
Yeah.
Okay, so she has a pistol at this point. B then finds a doggy door,
Yeah.
crawls through it, gets into the house, and she grabs a hammer. She goes back to the main room where all the girls are, and she's like, Jordan has a gun. Oh, by the way, she's like Ukrainian or Bulgarian or something.
Yeah.
So half the time you're like, what?
Yeah. Well,
But-
and I didn't catch this at first because, right, like when they're all introducing each other,
Mhm.
or not long after that, one of the girls, I can't remember who, I think it might have been Jordan, asks her if she's from Moscow. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? That's a weird question. It is because it wasn't until like maybe this point where she talks enough that you actually hear her accent.
Yeah, because
So-
she talks very, very little throughout it. But
yeah.
I mean, she has points where there's somewhat, but it's not like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like at this point is when I find like, oh, okay. Because now I can hear the accent on her. So yeah.
So she's like, Jordan has a gun, and she's like, no, I don't. She's like, empty your pockets. And a phone, she has a phone and the slip of paper that has the X on it,
From the,
saying
yeah.
that she was the killer in the game.
Yeah.
And they're like, she's like, why should anybody believe you? You're a liar, B. You lied to Sophie. And so this is now where B tells the truth. Holy
Yeah.
crap. What happened in the other scene? That for some reason they just shoved her out. B tells the truth. No school, no job. Mom has mental illness.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, mom has a mental illness. Maybe B has a mental illness too.
Yep.
And I'm like, maybe I have a mental illness too. But nobody believes me either. And yeah, I'm talking to you, government. So Jordan gets upset
Yeah.
because
Jordan
Sophie's
does.
like, re-embracing B at
Yeah.
this point.
Alice, meanwhile, is it Alice? What I don't know. Whoever the other girl is that's left besides Jordan.
Yeah, Alice. Yeah.
Alice. She's sympathetic though, because she's like, I understand. I have body dysmorphia.
I have body dysmorphia.
and I have in my notes, this would be another strike if it weren't for Jordan, who is immediately like rolls her eyes and says, "Oh, shut the up, Alice."
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, like, oh my God, why? I mean, this is just, yeah.
Yeah.
So then Jordan pulls the gun out.
Yep.
Okay. And they're all yelling at each other and blah, blah, blah. And Jordan's like, we didn't even want you here this weekend, Sophie.
Yeah.
Why did you ghost us for so long? And she's like, well, all of you enabled me. Why is it that, you know, I have these issues because this is where she's like, because I'm a girl and I'm black and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, a white male, blah, blah, blah. He's, you know, coked out and doing drugs and all that. But you guys are okay with that,
Yeah.
you know, because it's a guy and all that sort of stuff. So she's like, you enable me, you know, double standards type thing.
Yeah.
All of you are all coked out around me. And, you know, what am I supposed to do? You know,
Which is
you say you're my
legitimately
friend.
is pretty messed up, you know.
Yeah, they're all her friends,
Yeah.
but they're all not gonna, you know, help her. And then Jordan's like, well, why don't you tell B, Sophie? Why don't you tell her how you begged me to stop on my way up here to hook up with you? And I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And B's like, what? And then Sophie's like, you're unhinged, Jordan.
Yeah.
And then Jordan's like, you have no soul. Basically, we kind of see by this is that Sophie and Jordan have hooked up in the past.
Yeah.
They were together. There's some bad issues now that they have with each other.
Yeah.
Basically, now we just get secrets and confessions about everybody.
Yeah.
And how they all actually just really hate each other.
Yeah. And I don't know. Something weird happened to me at this point watching because we get like I think one of them. I think Jordan calls B a psycho, and someone's like, "Don't call her psycho. That's so ableist." Right.
Yep.
And then Alice is like, "Oh, I'm an ally," and they get like rambling back and forth. Sophie says that feelings are facts, and you trigger me. Yeah. So like, bam, 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 bam. We're getting all these buzzwords.
And she's like, no, facts are facts. Feelings aren't facts.
Yeah,
that's what Jordan says back. Yeah.
Yeah. We get like, oh, you're emotionally abusive. I'm like, and at this point, I'm like, I can't count all these strikes against this movie. And at this point, I'm like, holy crap, they're making fun of all this. That's what this is going on here. They are making fun. They are mocking all this nonsense in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. They are.
Yeah.
And so at this point, you got to kind of go with your strikes and go, oh, tear up the paper, and you're like, I get it.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it all at once here. Yeah.
Jordan proceeds to tell Alice that, you know, the only reason why anybody listens to your podcast is we all basically make fun of you while we're listening to it. And this is the best line of the whole film at this point. A podcast takes a lot of work. It does.
Yeah, it does.
It was true.
It is true.
So, and then Alice is like, nobody likes you, Jordan. And Jordan just is done. And she shoots Alice in the leg.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Alice was like, you did it. You killed them. And then Jordan's like, you made me do this. Yeah. And they start fighting for the gun and they're wrestling. And you're like, oh, man, it's going to.
You know, it gets me. It's like Jordan raises the gun and shoots Alice. And Alice is like, you shot me. And Jordan's like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't shoot her. Like, she's still holding the gun.
Yeah. And it's like this whole. Yeah, it was like this. It was a denial, to the point where it's like you were saying, it was like a mocking
Yeah.
of the whole thing. It's like taking this thing where it's like, if you can convince everybody that it's not really happening, it's gaslighting, basically, at that point.
Yeah.
If you can convince everybody that it's not really happening, then it's
Yeah.
not happening. So she's like, no, I didn't. Yeah, you're right. And so they're wrestling for the gun, and then now all the girls are wrestling for the gun.
Yeah.
They're down on the ground. Alice is on the bottom. They're just fighting for it, and then the gun goes off.
Yep.
We don't know who shoots. We don't know who had the finger on the trigger, but Alice is dead on the ground. Jordan's like, I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then she grabs the gun again, and she starts pointing. She starts backing up the stairs. She backs out of the room, holding the gun at Sophie. She's backing out. She's like, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't kill them. I didn't do all this sort of stuff. She goes up, backs all the way up this big staircase.
Yeah.
Gets to the top of it where the bedrooms are, and somehow B was in one of the bedrooms upstairs.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless there was another staircase coming up the other side. I don't know how she teleported up in there, but B comes out of one of the bedrooms, tries to knock the gun away. They wrestle around, and B throws Jordan over the banister.
Yeah.
So far at this point, the only person that we know that's actually killing people is B. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Jordan's not dead at this point. Jordan's laying on the ground, and she says, check her
Texts.
Check her
text.
what?
Her
Her
text.
texts.
Yes.
Holy crap. Okay.
So I assume she says this to B because, like you had mentioned earlier, yeah, she has said check her text. She was talking to B to say no, like we really did hook up. She texted me earlier. Check her text. So she says that
text.
again. Yeah.
Okay. Because I wrote down check her tax.
Check
And I'm like, what does the IRS have to do with this? At all?
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe Shane caught it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But she proceeds to shoot at them from the ground.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, okay, she's not dead. So Sophie and B hide in a closet in one of the bedrooms.
Yeah.
And B says, Sophie, did you kill Emma? And Emma's like, no. And then they run down the list. Did you kill such and such? Well, did you kill such and such? No. And then she's like, did you F Jordan? B's asking if she hooked up with Jordan. She's like, no, I didn't. And then this is where Sophie says, I love you.
Yeah.
Do you love me? And that's why at this point I was like, oh, now Sophie's saying it. Okay. That's why I thought it was B earlier. That's why I thought. I could go back and check it again, but would it matter? Not really. No. All right, so B backs up. Back farther into the closet.
Yeah.
And she's like, you frighten me. And Sophie's like, well, no, don't run. And B just runs away. And she's like, we have to stay together. I love you.
Yeah.
And she's chasing her through the house. And you're like, wow, Sophie's psycho.
Yeah.
B then is sneaking around.
Yeah.
I don't know where she's trying to go to. No clue. Rather than hiding, she's like sneaking around the house. And instead of just, I think this was to show everybody dead again, because we just see her sneaking past all the bodies.
Oh, yeah, okay.
For some weird reason. Oh, and by the way, now it's daytime.
Yeah, suddenly.
And there's no storm.
Nope. It was just one of those. It was just one of those overnight hurricanes. So,
yeah, and I'm talking like bright outside. It's not like this is, it's not like early morning. It's bright, like We're talking like, good 9 o'clock maybe. And it's like all of a sudden this is just daylight. B goes outside. We see David's body laying there.
Yeah.
B's for some reason just staring out into the distance, and Sophie runs up behind her and grabs her. She's like, I was wondering where you were. Blah, blah, oh, I love you type thing. And she's like, I have to confess, I gave Emma some pills when she was already on coke, and she tripped and she fell. Basically admitting it was my fault that she died. She tripped and fell down the stairs, though, because she was just so out of it.
Yeah.
B then pulls the gun on Sophie. And she's like, show me your phone. So Sophie pulls her phone out. She's like, okay. And she pulls it out and then throws it. So then B starts running towards it. Sophie's taking off after her. They like slide across the mud on the deck of the pool. They're fighting for the phone. They both roll into the pool.
Yeah.
They get up out of the water, and the phone is there in the mud, and they go to pick it up, and she's like, that's not my phone. And she's like, who that's not my phone. And B takes it over to David, like opens his eyes up, and has it do like facial recognition to the phone. And we see David on there making a TikTok video. Like it was like the camera was still going, or it had just saved a video or something. Yeah. And we see David on there. He's going to do a TikTok video, and he's trying to open a champagne bottle with that sword thing.
Yeah, just like Greg had done.
Yeah, earlier. And he's trying to do it, and he's trying all different ways with the sword, and he ends up pulling it back and slicing his own throat with the sword. And that's when he's like collapsing and dies and drops the phone and all that. And you're like, that's how he died? And then this guy shows up, and we assume it's Max.
Yeah.
Comes around into the gate, and he's like, what happened? And he sees like dead bodies and all that sort of stuff. The power comes back on because the fountains start going and all this sort of stuff. And you hear, boo, ding, ding, boo, boo, ding, boo, all these notifications. And then B goes, I have reception. And that's the end of the movie.
That's it.
So
I don't know, man. Oh man, this movie. Chris,
how many top 10 lists did this make it on?
I mean, okay. It's to be fair, it is in my top 10 list. Also, we've only done like 3 movies this year. So in about 7 weeks, it will...
I'm saying, okay, but top 10 of 2022.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I did see it in several.
It was in a lot of them.
Who was this movie for? That's what I can't figure out. Because, okay...
It's definitely a crowd, and it's a crowd of Pete Davidson fans. I am going to put it out there. It is a certain demographic of people in a certain age bracket who thought that this was hilarious and funny. Now, I will have to say this. The ending, when you find out that Pete Davidson was the reason why the whole thing got started, because he accidentally cut his own throat, I'm like, that was funny.
Yeah. I actually think that's pretty funny. Yeah.
That to me was the best part of the whole film. Okay, it was that twist at the very, very end. I was like, that's hilarious. Everybody turned on each other because of it.
Yeah.
The premise was hilarious. Was funny. The execution, the writing,
okay.
It
took like over halfway through the movie for me to finally realize, oh my gosh, they're making fun of these people. right? This entire like ultra radicalized left wing, I wake up every morning looking for ways to be offended crowd, they are mocking them, all right? That's what this movie is doing.
Hey, don't hit your mic.
I know, right? That's your job.
Yeah.
But and I'm all on board with that. But the writing has to back it up, and I hated all these characters. It's almost like they did too well making all these characters hateable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so if you're going to satirize something, you have to be good at writing satire. And to me, this did not land.
Yeah, no, I agree to the fact of you hated all of the characters so much.
Yeah.
And honestly, okay, to be quite honest with you, even though he was a dick, the only character that I really had any form of sympathy, well, okay, I take that back. There was two characters that I had sympathy for in this movie.
Yeah.
One of them was David.
Yeah.
Pete Davidson's character, because I mean, he's just a rich, douchey guy.
Yeah.
But he was kind of one of the more likable characters in a way. And Greg, I think Greg was the only one that I really felt bad for.
Yeah.
Because it was like he was just trying to have a good time. And this thing that happened to him was just, he was wrong place, wrong time.
He was trying to have a good time, and he was honestly trying to make sure everyone else was having a good time too.
Yeah.
The only reason I can give any credit at all to David is just because I think that ending scene is funny. And I mean, you know, he was funny throughout. Honestly, I don't know if you watched it, but post credits, there's kind of like some extra scenes and like almost blooper-ish type stuff. Some like just stuff where it's obviously just Pete Davidson just like going off at the camera. That was honestly the best part of the whole movie.
Yeah. So I mean, if you guys are able to rent the version with the bloopers and all that sort of stuff, do that. I mean, he's got some funny parts. There's some parts in some of that where I was just like, kind of like, wow, that was supposed to be funny.
Yeah, I know, right? But I just like, you know, I think one of my big problems is like, and again, I go back to who was this for? Because the people that you're mocking, for one, they're not going to appreciate being mocked. But two, do you think you're speaking to them? Because the people that this movie was mocking, for one, they don't have the intellectual fortitude to understand that they were being mocked, right? And two, they don't have the emotional intelligence to be able to handle, you know, even if they did figure it out.
So, wow. I'm going to have to make a Shane soapbox.
Yeah.
Think about it.
I mean, don't you feel like the entire movie is saying exactly that? You know, like,
I mean,
there's no actual content to any of the things that any of these people say. It's all just buzzwords.
Oh yeah, it's buzzwords. You know? Every character in this film was extremely hollow.
Yeah.
With
the possible exception of B, because we really don't get much in the way of character development from her.
We don't get much of a character development really from anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
Enough to care about any of them.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even there were points where even with B where you're just like, well, screw her.
Yeah.
You know, and it really was. There are points in this movie where it makes you, and this could be a very, very smart tactic too. You just hate everybody. Like, if you knew that they were the killer, you'd be like, screw them.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and it didn't matter who it was.
The thing is, there are characters across television and movies that you love to hate. You hate that character, but they're so well written. It's like, wow, they did such a great job. These characters, I just can't stand them.
You can care less.
No,
yeah, you can care less.
I legitimately do not care. I mean, yeah, I joked earlier about rooting for the killer, but like at one point I was like with Alice, I was like, oh my gosh, just kill her so I don't have to listen to her anymore. You know?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, good grief.
Now, this movie is set up where basically you're almost following B as
Yeah.
the main character.
Yeah.
What was interesting about it is because of all of these people's rage and everything, or all of their mistakes, or all of their shortcomings and all this sort of stuff. That's the reason why they died.
Yeah.
You know,
it's the willingness to just jump to conclusions about people.
Yeah. David was trying to impress people.
Yeah.
And be cocky and all this sort of stuff, and ended up killing himself. Then you've got Emma, who was given drugs by somebody who shouldn't have been on drugs at that point. I mean, none of them should have, but you know what I'm saying is like, it's because of Sophie's addiction problem. Yeah. She gave Emma the drugs. Yeah. Emma dies.
And that almost sounds like, oh, geez, poor Emma. Well, no, because it's kind of established early on, and I think it's Sophie that says, I don't even remember, but they basically be like, Emma doesn't really like David. She just didn't want to be alone.
Yeah.
You know? So that's, you know.
Yeah. She's empty. She's hollow. She's looking for something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely not poor as, you know, Emma, you know, and everything like that. Jordan, you know, she definitely killed Alice because of she just couldn't stand her type thing.
Yeah.
B killed the two that she killed to protect Sophie.
Yes.
She said.
Oh, yeah. And although I do agree with you a bit that, like, you maybe she's not exactly someone easy to sympathize with, because arguably she didn't really have to hit Greg a second time. You know, it totally justified in the first time, I would argue, in the sense that, he had a knife and, you know, they really thought that he was the one who did it. So knock the dude out. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then she
clubs him the second time. He was still moving and he was still moving. So there was so much wrong with this movie.
I know, dude. I know. Oh my god.
I don't even know where to. I mean, it was almost trying to be like a Shakespearean Greek, you know, like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
But in a modern day lens.
Yeah.
And I say Shakespearean and Greek tragedy all in the same because.
Yeah, I know what you're going for.
I know that they aren't the same. However, you know, you take humor and tragedy, they work hand in hand.
Yeah.
It did not execute properly.
You know what I couldn't help but think throughout this entire thing is, and again, I'm all for mocking this crowd, but it doesn't matter where your satire is coming from. It has to be well executed. And this, honestly, the way all this was written reminds me more of how, like the Daily Wire might write a movie to portray, oh, here, look at these idiot leftists. You know?
Yeah.
This is exactly, you know, we talked earlier about Velma. Velma is so bad that there's this conspiracy that it's a false flag operation by right wingers to, you know, how they think that the left writes comedy.
Wow.
Right? This is so bad that that's almost what it feels like, but it's not. You know?
Kind of. Yeah, you know, I agree with that. And you're right. I don't know who this was written for, and all I could think of is that it's written by people of the same TikTok generation, for people of a TikTok generation.
Yeah.
Who are trying to say, look what you're doing. You're vapid. You're just, you know, totally into yourself, that you're not paying attention to anything else around you.
Yeah.
Yet, because it is the TikTok generation and because it is all this sort of stuff, that anything beyond a 30-second video is hard for them to accomplish.
Yeah.
So that's my take on the film.
This was like a whole bunch of TikTok videos strung together, because Yeah, it's like there can't be a point that stretches past 30 seconds.
And I do have to say, my biggest trepidation and apprehension to come, man, those are some big ass words for me today. To come into watching this film was Pete Davidson.
Oh, really? Yeah.
He was the reason why I was just like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. And to me, he was one of the, I think the reason why he was probably more of a connecting point or something is because I knew who he was.
Yeah.
And the ending is really, it was just like, the dude's a doofus, man.
Yeah.
That's why he died. And yes, you kind of need Pete Davidson to pull that off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's funny, it's like I've seen people after I watched this, I kind of, I got online and I'm like, what? I mean, I had to know what other people thought. And a lot of people didn't like that twist. And to me, I'm like, that's the only thing that redeems this movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have just been a generic, whodunit with characters that, like, you don't care who done it because you just wish they were all dead.
Yeah.
And
and they were looking for a real killer to point the whole thing to.
Yeah.
Because they wanted a slasher horror. Whereas this was more of a, we all are the villain.
Yeah.
Type thing. So, yeah. Man,
That's a very good series of descriptions there about how I feel about the movie too.
Yeah. And mind you, this is an A24 film.
Yeah.
This is the second A24 film this last year that I was just like, huh? What?
Yeah.
The first one being Men.
Yeah.
And now Bodies, and
which again, and I know we didn't cover it on the podcast, but Men, I think, had a solid premise. It's just that it,
wasn't executed properly.
Yeah, I mean,
well, that ending was just, the ending to me was not executed properly on Men. I kind of get an idea of what they were trying to go for.
Yeah.
But it was just so vague. Let us know if you guys want us to do a scene by scene breakdown of Men.
This will be one time. This will be the only time on this channel I will be glad that nobody ever comments, because
man. So make sure while you guys are commenting, hit like and subscribe.
Yeah.
And just show Shane wrong and leave those comments. So tell us if you guys want us to watch Men or again and do the breakdown of it. But yeah, it just wasn't executed properly. And I think that's kind of what's concerning me too about this, that new Joaquin Phoenix one that's coming out, The Fear of whatever. I
was afraid. The new Ari Aster film.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's another A24, and I'm just like, man, has A24 just gotten to this point where they're just like, we're just going to outdo ourselves and just get to this point where it's just like the movies just don't make sense, or they're getting so far out there that it's like, we're going to do this to blow everybody out of the water and say that it's art, but it's actually just crap with a bow on it.
So I think what happened is, because I was wondering about this too, like what's happened with A24, and I started digging a bit, and I honestly think that we kind of just got lucky with the A24 films that we watched, because the long-standing thing with A24 seems to be that they have hits and they have misses, just like any other studio.
Oh yeah,
it's that they take such risks and they put out such, I guess, I don't want to say experimental art house films, artsy films, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like this is at least on brand for them. I just think that it's, sort of the brand of them that I don't like.
Yeah. So, in summary, my take on Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. It's a box of flaming crap with a nice packaging.
Yeah.
So, so far, this is out of top 10 lists. I think 3 or 4 out of the 10 that most people have said that they thought was the best of the year, I am in complete disagreement with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Lee Pace did a great job, though. I will have to say that.
Yeah.
I liked him in this.
Yeah.
I like him in most stuff that he does. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So you guys can take those top 10 lists and shove
you know
them
what?
up your butts.
I'll actually hand it to the cast, because if their job was to make you hate their character, every single one of them did it. It's just, I honestly wish they could have had better writing so that you could at least, love to hate them. Whereas I actually just freaking hated all of them, except for, Greg.
Yeah.
So,
well, I liked the soundtrack. So there. That was about it. I liked it. I liked it. So it's mostly stuff that I'd have playing in my car anyway. Anyway, so yeah, if you guys are interested in checking this out, you guys can check it out on Amazon, iTunes. Where else can you Google? Some other play, Mumble.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mumble. Yeah, whatever. Anyway,
it is on Amazon. That's all I know.
So check it out there. Here's some other films that you guys might be interested in, though, that aren't hopefully flaming boxes of turds wrapped up in a pretty bow. And they should be coming up right about now. Anyway, you guys can check these out in the next few weeks to a month to the year, maybe. Coming into either theaters or streaming on demand, physical copies, whatever. Yeah, check those out. Wipe it away.
Check these out.
Go away.
Yeah.
Go away. Okay. Anyway, like we like to do every week, we have a little segment that we call Stories. Horrific or not, they're here in our world. Life. Real. We're... I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, these are stories of things that happened in the real life or in our world that sometimes are crimes, sometimes they're horrific, whatever. Some of them supernatural, some of them not. Anyway, this story comes from 1965. The year, not the latitude and longitude. Fred and Edwina Rogers and their adult son Charles were residing in the peaceful area of Houston, Texas. The family tended to keep to themselves, especially with Charles's antisocial and reclusive behavior. In fact, many of the neighbors were unaware that Charles even lived at home with his parents, so they never saw him around. A family member inquired that the Houston police checked on the elderly aunt and uncle after not hearing from the Rogers for several days. The patrolman saw food on the dining room table but could not find Fred or Edwina. When they opened the fridge, many meat packages were neatly stacked on top of one another, and 2 human heads were then discovered in the vegetable bins.
Oh, man.
When more police officers arrived on the scene, they began to remove the bags of severed body parts from the refrigerator. They were Fred and Edwina Rogers' remains. Autopsies revealed that Fred had sustained a severe head injury from a claw hammer, while Edwina had been severely battered and shot. Fred's genitalia had been cut off and his eyes had been gouged out, and the internal organs of the pair had been flushed down the toilet.
Oh my gosh.
There was also no sign of Charles. He was the only suspect in this case. And Charles was ruled deceased in 1975 because no sign of him could ever be located. This case has never been solved. Some call it the Icebox Murder. This is not to be confused with the Icebox Murder film. This also kind of reminds me, there was a story, Jack Black played the character about a guy who killed an old woman and stored her in her freezer, her chest freezer. Anyway, that took place just about 15 minutes from here.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah. So if you guys want to know what it's like around where I live, and the whole thing was filmed down there too. That's what it's like. I just gave away where I live.
Yeah.
Anyway, nobody listens to this. Whatever. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, never been solved. So that guy could still be out and about with fridges full of meat,
Yeah.
people meat. But anyway,
Right.
if you guys have a real life horror story, write us. Let us know. You guys can write us at castersofhorror@gmail.com, or you can put it in the comments down below, or DM us on any of our social media. But also make sure you guys like and subscribe. That's important because it is.
That's
So it is. Anyway, before we leave, we like to do a little thing called pick or pass, or pick it or hack it, or pick it or axe it, or let it live or let it die. I don't know. So anyway, these are films, TV series, shows, artwork. I don't know. People. Who knows? Things that we've come across in the last week or so that we think you guys should check out or just stay away from completely. Shane, I'm going to let you start us off.
Yeah. So I don't think I mentioned this on the podcast, but I know I told you a few weeks ago that there was a short film I watched several years ago that I really liked, and then I've spent the past month or so trying to find it. I found it.
Hey,
it actually found me. It popped up into my feed on YouTube again.
nice.
It's called "I Heard It Too" by Matt Sears, and I make that distinction because apparently there's an animation with the same name, but
Okay.
But no, this is just a little 7-minute short horror film. I feel like I've seen something since then. I don't know if this ever got expanded or used in another concept or whatever, but yeah, it's basically just about this mother and this little girl are home alone, and girl wakes up in the middle of the night and starts hearing mom calling for her to come downstairs. But then next thing you know, mom comes rushing in and says, "I heard it too." So yeah, that's all I'm going to give away.
Nice.
But yeah, really enjoyed this short film, and it's worth a watch. "I Heard It Too" by Matt Sears.
Nice. So you say it's a pick.
It's a pick. It is.
Okay. I was gonna say that I did watch The Last of Us, the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
But since everybody's picking that one, I figured I'd let that one pass. It is a great show, but instead of going back into that, I did watch a documentary. It was called Trail to Terror. This was the documentary that actually started off the series Destination Fear, which follows a brother and sister team of investigators and their friends, and they go to haunted locations. This show, or this particular documentary, 5 nights. 5 nights and 5 different haunted locations, and each night they stay overnight.
Okay.
So they go into the location, they kind of do some investigating, and then they have to sleep there 5 nights in a row, thus their road trip.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it did start off the Travel Channel or Discovery Plus or whatever you want to call it series, Destination Fear. It was a great documentary. It was worth checking out. It's since got me into watching the show. So, and I'm a huge paranormal,
Oh yeah,
ghost hunting type show.
Me too. I love those things.
Most nights, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Is I'm checking them out. Yeah. So anyway, except for this last weekend. This last weekend was different. I binge watched a whole anime. Well, not a whole anime series, but like my whole family, we just sat down and just watched like 2 seasons of an anime. But
Okay.
anyway, Normally, we're just sitting around watching ghost shows. But yeah, check it out. It's called Trail to Terror. It's worth checking out. But anyway, that's what I have. It's definitely a pick from me. If you guys have a pick or pass, let us know down in the comments. Something we should check out, or if we should still check out Men. Make sure to comment that down there, just for Shane's sake.
Yeah.
Say yes. But also make sure to like and subscribe while you guys are down there. Shane, what are we reviewing next?
All right, our next film is going to be
Megan.
Finally, we will be reviewing this highly talked about film. I can't wait.
Anyway, we'll be checking that one out next. So stick around. This one I'm hearing good things about. So hopefully they're not idiots. Like whoever, oh my word, I don't know who made the top 10 list from last year, but I am highly disappointed.
Yeah,
I am highly disappointed in
I tell you what, I almost feel like once we can get through the films on like most of those lists, if we can, I almost want to review some top 10 lists, because I tell you what,
and be like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, wow.
A lot of it, I think, has to do with like commercial marketing too.
Yeah,
you know, you take some of these big companies and they're like, oh, these ones are people who did big things for us this last year, or you know, we have favors in people's pockets or whatnot. And you know, it's like you know, all sorts of different things that it could be. And you know, I'm just saying. Anyway,
yeah,
who knows? Anyway. Make sure you guys like and subscribe before we leave. And if you guys decide to do it after, then do that too. So anyway, until next week, I'm Chris Mess.
I'm Shane.
Get the hell out of here. We'll see you guys.
Ha 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 ha.